So now, that means, like y'all, a few people said, slavery's not over then, right? Because even like you said, then anybody, even in here today, could be enslaved. Because they could be fearful for something that they would want to have, but if they don't behave a certain way that somebody else wants them to, now they can't get this thing, right? So now, on that premise, we go back to the word community and taking you to my community. There are many people who still make millions of dollars a year on plantations in the South. And what they do now is instead of harvesting Carolina gold rice, Sea Island cotton, and indigo, which were the three major cash crops that built the infrastructure of not only the Gullah Geechee Nation, but of what is now called the United States of America, that and the human cargo that we've talked about earlier, all right? They make money off of tourism by people wanting to come to see the big house, wanting to see these oak-lined roads, wanting to be on the beaches, because like I said, we literally live in the Atlantic Ocean. So now if the natives, the Gullah Geechees, do not think the way a destructionaire, y'all call them developers, I call them destructionaire, feels this place should be marketed, feels it should be rebuilt, feels that certain areas should be closed off, we are the ones who are made to seem as if we're criminals. So in the political arena, people try to do things to destroy your reputation or your name, or they will physically try to imprison people so that they figure if we do this, it could be a minor infraction. A person ran a stoplight, all of a sudden they get years in jail. Like with Dr. Martin Luther King, God bless the dead, he ran a traffic sign, so they said, and they were going to put him on the chain gang. Okay? So now, do you think that's justice? Or is that bondage? Bondage, right? But again, just like with the choice of if this door is locked, we had a choice. Were we going to talk together and make a decision, put together a way that we could get out this window? Because we suddenly realized where we were living in this circle right here, somebody had built walls around the circle someplace and then started calling them gated areas, gated communities, retirement villages, all tourism-oriented entities so that people can do this. Okay? And so then they would move in and tell us we didn't have a right to live everywhere where we've been living for almost 400 years. And that if we disagreed, it was because we just were too emotional. We were anti-progress. How can you want to still live in that old-fashioned? Well, why are you building houses that look like something from 1670 and then telling us we want to live in the old-fashioned? Okay? So here it is that you have a situation where newcomers come in and use that word that I said I loved earlier. What's the word I said I loved so much that Dr. Lawrence said? Community. And they start calling themselves the community associations. And meanwhile, those of us who were born and raised, they're like, them people ain't nothing we talk about. We're in the grind, talk about community. Hey, get out you. Okay? They're not the community. We're the community. So based on this course, and based on all of what I just said, does anything connect to anything you've talked about or learned or read so far in this course? In regard to the dynamics of community? Yes, I see your head nodding. Well, we'll start on this end this time, come all the way around. Anything for you? You just ain't read nothing in this class yet. Dr. Lawrence didn't tell you one thing.
No, I'm just
trying to put it all together.
Yeah.
So you want me to come back around to you?
Yeah, can you come back to me?
Sure, I'll do that. You think so, Nancy? No. Nikki, you think I should come back to her?
Yeah.
All right. Don't go out that window before I get back.
We talked about I guess, how people become oppressed. That's what we were talking about here. What you speak of to people coming in and creating gated communities where there were already existing functioning communities, and how that works into play and how the powerful can oppress. Those that they assume have no power, maybe in a Western sense, or in like, as they define power.
And I'm glad you put it that way, as they define power, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of that before until you were
So I just said yes, because that is always an issue and a dynamic, is when you say who's powerful and who's not, who's defining power.
Exactly.
You see? Because there's so many different definitions and so many different sources that we can be pulling from that are still powerful, right?
What I've been relating is how we've been recently talking to some degree about how being oppressed and being put in a box starts at an early age. You know, in like what you were talking about, you come into a classroom and most of the time it's linear and box-like and square, and that, you know, starts from kindergarten on, and it also has to, you know, follow in a line, you know, that kind of like the organizational structure of creating someone who is in power. And that's just what I've been reading.
That's a perfect example, because as soon as you said that, I thought of kindergarten, and they tell you line up, right? And you hear this throughout grade school. Line up, stand against the wall, in a line, in a line, you know. So they're telling you right there what the organizational structure is. You don't hear them say get in a circle too often, you know. And circles start in the past. I don't know, but now with y'all. But when we had recess, you know, circles might have been because a game was being played. So they didn't take that as something that had to do with structure now. That meant it was relaxation and recreation, and it could be circular. But anything that they meant get down to business, it was get in line. Hold the line. Hold the line. Right? So it's very critical to the structure of Western society, right?
We always talk about like how it's just become a pattern that we've gotten used to being put in order, kind of, and we go along with it, and how we don't really push the box, like you were saying, like we just kind of, such as like private. I went to a private school, but they would be able to have enough money to kind of have these classes where it's smaller, like people, like you can have discussions with your teacher, and you can start seeing education more as a way of you kind of growing up as a person and being an individual. But I feel like you talk about how public schools kind of do the opposite, and you kind of get lost in the numbers, which is sad that it has to do with money and what kind of situation you're in.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And that's a prime example.
And it's sad.
And it's
because
sad.
people aren't given the opportunity that a lot of others
Have.
Yeah.
And it's all, again, based on a structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a class structure for you to be able to afford to go to a private school. Or to say, well, public school is not offering enough, so I'll pay for my child to go to this other school that offers more. You see? Yep.
I was thinking about the definition that you gave for slavery, or like that we were discussing slavery, and how there's like a system that wants people to live a certain way and sort of to conform, and there's like a fear sort of placed on living outside of
that conformity.
Yeah, and just thinking about like whenever people sort of question what's going on, there's sort of like this. People jump on them like, yeah, you are anti-progress, and like, of course, the way that we're living is the best way. Like, this is what we want, instead of actually like making sure, or just taking time to challenge the way that things are, and just like questioning if this is really meeting the needs of
everyone. Right? That's a collective unit, as opposed to maybe meeting the need of that one individual or that one company. You see? And it's interesting, even going back to your statement about not challenging the box and the constructs. Didn't you notice that there were people in here that weren't going to challenge anything? They said they were going to sleep. So they weren't participating at all, but they were like, I'm going to sleep through the discussions, the sharing of the food, the fighting over the food, the figuring out how to get out the window to see if we can unlock the door. They just were like, I'm out of this system altogether. And that's real world. And I don't mean to show, okay? That's real world. There are some people that just unplug. And they do it a lot of times because of what you're saying now. They don't want to have to deal with the confrontation because they don't agree with the pattern that's being set.
I was just thinking too, like people get sometimes, like I guess, overwhelmed by the system or whatever, and it's easier to just like get caught up in your day-to-day life, and that's sort of a way of like putting yourself to sleep with most of what's going on.
Very true. Very, very true.
I've related to like how communities are structured, and sometimes how it's a cycle, like how you were saying with the Geechee people, how people with money come in and they see scenery and they want to make money, they want to make profit. So then they move, you know, they try to enforce laws and money to try to make it non-affordable for these people to live. So they move, these people have to move, and they move into these places where are affordable, and they start doing this everywhere. So everybody has to come together, and then it's a problem. And then they try to reinforce it and try to fix it all over.
All over again. And sometimes you can't fix some things that break, you see, and nor can you replace them. So when you talk about a cultural community, you can't displace it and then say, well, I can fix it by replacing it over somewhere else, you see, because even though the person will still be born Gullah Geechee, their acculturation now, their next couple of generations will not be the same. Because if they have to move even inland, much less to an urban environment, they can't even feed themselves from the land and water now. So you have that dynamic that again further disenfranchises, so they don't have the economic stability they had where they were. So where you said they moved to somewhere else that might have been affordable, it might have been affordable based on what they had saved from where they were, and now here, because it's a whole nother type of economy, they can't afford that either, and then where do they go? You see?
Mm-hmm.